Amy, what I love about you is that you are beautifully normal. Which when you take into account, your story's pretty wild, and it's remarkable that you are so normal, beautifully.
It's a compliment.
It is a compliment, right? Because growing up, Amy, you had this incredible, loving family that you grew up in, but you also grew up in a full-blown cult. And this is not some little wacky little family, little group together. This is like 2,000 people community, closed to the outside world, like major TV programs like ABC's Four Corners program. All their investigative journalists went in there and they blew this thing up.
Tried to, yeah.
Tried to.
2 times.
2 times, yeah. So how controlled was your life back then?
Hello?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My life, it was very controlled. It was normal to me. It was, for example, I went to this church many, many times a week. It was in Brisbane. There were, like Lex said, probably 2,000 at least people just at the Brisbane campus, and it's across Australia and a few countries around the world. And I had never, ever, ever set foot in another church, ever. This is pre-sermons being recorded. I'd never listened to any other Christian music. I wasn't allowed to. I had to marry someone from this congregation, which would be heavily encouraged of who that would be. I had cousins there and all my friends were there. I went to a public school, like a state school, but I was allowed to have a friends there, but I didn't socialise with them outside of school. So all my friends were at this church.
And what about your beliefs? How controlled were they?
Extremely controlled. So if I left this church, I was taught that I'd go to hell, and I believed it. That was one of the things that, they got into all the children. And except for going to Sunday school and hearing about Jesus in the Bible stories, I didn't understand who Jesus was. What I understood was that God had placed these group of elders, which were just in Brisbane alone, at least 20 of them. These elders were between us and God, and anytime I wanted to hear from God or atone for a sin, I would go to the elders, and they would, it was called fellowshipping with the elders, and we would go to them weekly with our problems or our sins, and they would give us direction about how to deal with that, and everything was done through the elders. Our salvation was outworked through these elders.
And what was this unmarriageable thing? What was that big stick? How did that work?
So as you grew up, became a teenager, late teenagers, I was a normal girl. I could not wait to get married. But if you did not toe the line, if you were not in the elders' good books, which was a constant changing thing, if you were not on enough serving teams, if you were not basically doing what you're told, then you would be deemed unmarriageable. And that was a big fear thing to hold over a young person's head who just wants to grow up and be normal.
And as we were preparing for this, you made a statement to me that really sort of stuck, and you said that people in a cult don't know they're in a cult. So how did you escape? Like, how did you get out there? And I know there's a story Jesus told in Matthew 13, and you really relate to it. It means so much to you. And we're going to see this morning how your story and that story, how they meet and intertwine. But how did you get out?
So, yes, as Lex said, I had no idea. Like, I look at your faces and you're all like, what? And I can talk about this, 13, 14 years later, and it's as clear as day to me. But I was born there. It's all I knew. All my friends acted the same. We all believed the same thing. You have no idea. Yes, Four Corners happened twice while I was there. And you know what we believed? The enemy persecutes those who are close to God. So for us, it just made us dig our heels in even more. I had no reason to question the way I was living or being taught to live. But I've painted a rather stark picture, but the reality is I loved my life there. I was born into a loving family, Lex. It was, I have a few siblings, I had cousins, we had a very busy life. I grew up seeing people love God, who we thought was God. We were a busy church with Bible studies and home groups and conferences and weddings, because in a big church like that and everyone's getting married within the church, you host all the weddings. Like, it was every week. There was something to do. We had young adults. I was at church 3, 4, 5 times a week. And I loved my life. I loved it. And
well, I'm not sure about that, because when we were talking, that is not actually what you told me. Yes, you said you loved your life, but something was really missing, and that became a very big driving force in you, wasn't it?
Yes, so up until about 16, I loved my life. And then I began to feel very empty. I just desperately wanted to find peace. I wanted to find peace for my salvation, which was just this thing which was constantly being hung over my head of, if you do the right thing, you'll go to heaven. If you don't, you won't. And I couldn't live like that. And I got to a point around 17 where I just cried out to God that I can't do this. I can't love other people. The thing that got me was that I couldn't look at someone else and love them. I'd just be judging them, because I was constantly judging myself. If I had to toe the line, everyone had to toe the line, and that must be the way God is. This thing that grew in me this warring in me actually started from a little child. So I told Lex that from about around 5 was the first time I felt God's love. And I would say that I knew God's love. I did. But it never lined up with this life that I was living. And it was very confusing. And I just was finding... I felt this uncertainty about the God I was serving at this church, and this stillness inside of me of this love that I had felt as a child. And I wanted to feel that love all the time, but I couldn't. Keep going.
Well, you had no sense of who Jesus was at all, right? And so he was just like one of those names in a Bible, like Elijah or someone like that. And this emptiness that you felt, this disconnection, you didn't know Jesus existed in a sense, right? So it's not like anyone's teaching you. So how did this begin? Where was the change?
Okay, you have to go on a bit of a journey with me. And we will come back to the parable that we would love to share today, and I love. And yes. Lex can interrupt and we can intertwine that.
When we were talking about this, I said, you just keep going, and if you're going too long, I'll jump in and wreck it and get you back on track. So you just go for it. Don't you wish someone could do that to me each week? Stop me and get me back on track? That would be I love you. Yep.
So yes, around 16, 17, I just felt this confusion in my soul. And I desperately, desperately loved God. I had no idea who Jesus was. So the teaching there was that God had arranged it from the beginning of the world. First he sent the prophets, and then he sent the kings, and then he sent Jesus, and now he's sent the elders. Always something between us and God. And that's what I believed. So when I had this warring inside of me, I went to the elders and I said, I just don't have peace. And they just kept sending me away and saying, there's some hidden sin in your life, you need to go find it. Stop. They actually told me to stop praying to God at night. You're going to go crazy. Stop doing that prayer thing. Just find that sin, come to us, and your life will be sorted. And of course, that wasn't going to be the answer for me. So I got down on my knees and I just cried out to God in honest desperation. And he spoke to me. So God said to me, and it's not what I wanted to hear, he said to me that he was going to sift me like wheat. He took me to that scripture and said, I'm going to sift you like wheat, but I am praying that you will stand. And in that moment, in my room, this cloud descended around me. It's hard to explain, but I can see it, and I still remember it. I don't see it now, but I still remember it to today. And for a whole year, from that moment, for a whole year, I started to question everything I believed. I'd never done that before. I didn't question the elders. They were my ticket to heaven. I was terrified of ever leaving the church and going to hell. But this cloud descended and I just started to question. I questioned God. I questioned his existence. I questioned, did he know me? Who was he? Who is he? And I initially started going to the elders and asking a few questions, but that wasn't working. So I just kind of held it in here. And for a year, I questioned. And at that time, I just started university and God started to speak to me. Now, the only time I felt peace was when I heard his voice and he started to show me things. I'd walk into a lecture theatre one day and God pointed out a girl. I'd never met her before. As 300 people in the lecture theatre, and he said, that girl doesn't know me, but by the end of this semester, she's going to know me. Go sit with her and befriend her. And I knew he wasn't asking me to outreach to her. How can I? I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know what to say. I used to try because I loved God and I loved people, but all I ended up saying was come to my church, and it just didn't feel right. So I sat with this girl and I befriended her, and she got to know some other Christians on campus, and by the end of that, she was from China. She herself had never known God before either. And I watched this girl meet Jesus and meet God. I never went to any of her church meetings. I didn't really even I was still so caught up in my theology that I couldn't, if she told me about Jesus, it would have meant nothing to me. I still was thinking in my head, okay, God, so this girl's going to come to my church because clearly every other church is in death and darkness, so that must be what's going to happen. But it didn't. And this beautiful girl, Kathy, I'm still actually friends with her today. She ended up marrying a Christian guy and stayed in Australia. But God, as you can see, God began to speak to me.
That's quite amazing, in a whole lecture room of 300 people, and a sense that God's going to bring her to him before this happens, and it does, and you're still thinking, great, now I'll get her into my cult. That's what
I didn't know I was in a cult, Les.
I get that, but that's what you're thinking, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Another way God began to speak to me was through songs. Now, I'm not musical. You'll never, ever see me up here. But he gave me songs, about 10 to 15 songs over that year. A couple before, a few after, but mostly in that year. And they began to tell a story about who God is. And then the very last song he gave me was, the words are that it's all about Jesus. And it opened my eyes. And God is very, very clever. He knows how to break through into our darkness and our confusion and our world that we find ourselves in. And he's so gracious, and his goodness chases us down. And these songs, which I can still remember every word of every song and the tune, he gave me a tune for them too, that goes with them till this day. And I make up songs for my kids all the time, but I can never remember them. He used songs because I was so heady. I couldn't open my Bible, and it's obvious now, but read the scriptures, because everything I read through the lens of these elders. I was taught that whenever you read Jesus in you, or any kind of form of that is the elders in you. I had such a warped lens that I could not open the scriptures and read them or understand them.
And you had you describe it as a white flag moment. Tell us about that.
So about a year later, I was driving to uni and I had to pull over. I was just so exhausted and so desperate and so confused about what I was seeing and what God was showing me and speaking to me about, and everything on this side that I'd always known. And the funny thing is, Lex, that in this year, I actually threw myself into church life even more because I was terrified. I was terrified that I was on the path to leaving, and we all knew what that meant. So I was living this contrast, and I just had this white flag moment where I pulled over on the side of the road and I just cried out to God and I said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot promise you that I am not going to leave, or I don't know, walk away or something. I can't do it. There's nothing in me that is strong enough. And he said to me, his words broke through and he said to me, finally. And I was like, what? And he said, there is nowhere you will go or you can go that I won't come find you. And as he spoke those words, it just undid everything in me, and it broke through all my fears, and with that, this flood of peace for my salvation that I had been seeking for that year prior came, and it's never left to this day.
And that setting you free, like the power of those words were enormous to you. Like really, that was your moment. And so you then left.
No.
No? You're
you
still
would
there?
think so. You would think.
Oh, you have left though, yes. You've
left
the cult. Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
Oh, Lex, you don't understand cults.
Well, get to that moment.
Sorry. You would think that after having this incredible moment with God that you would leave a cult, right? But I thought God had gifted me this salvation so I could serve at the church even more. Finally, I understood what clearly 2,000 other people got from the time they were born, and it took me a long time to get it. So I went back with joy, so much happiness, that I was finally at peace and I could serve and get married and, tick all the boxes. But that next Sunday, I entered that church service and I found myself going, what are they talking about? It just, all of a sudden, nothing they ever said made sense again. And initially I was like, oh, not again, I'm questioning again, this is terrifying. But pretty quickly I realised that I had met God. Well, yes. Pretty quickly after that moment, I opened my Bible and I was able to read about Jesus. And God it was like the words were jumping out of the page in the Bible, and I was like, it's about Jesus. Like, what is no one getting this? And because I had met Jesus for the first time in my life, my eyes were opened and I was able to I guess, recognize that what they were teaching wasn't right. And it took a year to find the courage to stand in an auditorium of 2,000 people and believe that the God I had met was the true God. That his promises that if I seek him, I will find him were true. And that I could stand there and hold on to that tightly because I said to God, it was like that one of those last Sundays, I said, how can I be right and 2,000 people be wrong? It terrified me. But the God I had found was real. And he was doing it. I was a lost cause at this point.
So you've discovered Jesus for yourself for the first time. Take us up to the moment when you left. How did you feel?
It was like I was so happy. I was just buzzing with joy, Lex. I desperately wanted to tell my friends. I tried it once, telling my dearest cousin about Jesus, and she just looked at me like, what are you talking about? Have you spoken to the elders this week? Kind of look. And I planned my escape. You have to do that. I tried really hard to keep a way to keep in touch with my friends, but essentially on that Thursday that I chose to leave, Within 24 hours, everyone had cut me off and I never spoke to anyone again. It's taught there that, like, you're married to the elders. Literally, it's in the vows that you're married to the elders first before your spouse. So if your spouse leaves, you must divorce. Parents, kick their children out of home, or vice versa. Children will disown their parents all the time. Like, it's very, very common. So that I knew what was coming. I knew that in leaving, I was going to lose all my family, my friends, my way of life, my everything I knew. I didn't know anything outside of this place. I didn't have a friend outside of this place. So, but deep down, I was just so excited. I felt like I had opened this treasure and I just could not wait to find what was inside.
So now take us to this story Jesus told, right? Why is that so important? What is the story?
So the story is from the parable. Yep. It's from Matthew 13:44. I'd love to read it to you. I'm actually going to read from the New King James Version, which is not something I usually do. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and he sells all that he has and he buys that field. Now, when I chose this parable, the thing that drew me to it was this treasure. And when you look up the Greek word meaning for this word treasure, it actually means a storehouse. And you didn't just find a gem or a piece of gold, which would have been exciting, but what he uncovered had been concealed. And again, that word concealed, not just accidentally hidden. Someone had concealed this treasure. And this man, when he uncovered it, he found a storehouse. And that's exactly how I felt. I had met Jesus and I knew that I saw it. I saw his kingdom and all that he was, and that was all about Jesus, and he was my salvation and he was going to be my life. And I could not wait to follow him. But it was going to cost me something.
The joy you left with, you told me that no one else ever left this cult with joy. It was always shrouded in all this terrible stuff. But you left with joy, and that's a word that's in this parable, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt.
So tell me more about this parable and why it's so important to you.
So I'd love to take you back to the beginning of it. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field which a man found. Now, even that word man, the word that Jesus used there doesn't mean man, like a male man.
A bloke.
A bloke.
An Aussie bloke. Yeah.
It actually is the word for humankind, which is everybody. Man, woman, girl, boy, child, anyone. And I love that. I love that it's a person. It wasn't a treasure that the elders found and they were going to dish out to you. It was Jesus is speaking directly about a person who he wants to give something to. It's in a field where this man was working it. So back in first century, the Jews worked these fields. Some of them owned them, and it would have been a very strong family tie. It's like ancestral and what do you call it? It's gone for me. Anyway, the fields were their livelihood, right? And they've probably been through generations, and it means a lot to them, and their possessions as well. And this man, he didn't own it, but he was working it. And I relate to that. I related to working on my salvation and just working this field. And I thought I knew what I needed to survive. I thought I had what I needed to survive. But as I was doing that, I uncovered something far greater. And just how good is God that he wants to give that to us. That I feel like he just reached in and just revealed himself to me. Yeah.
In this parable, the word found, he found this treasure, you found this treasure, doesn't mean that they were looking for it. It actually means accidentally. You weren't looking for Jesus.
I was not looking for Jesus.
You had something missing in your life, but there wasn't like a sense of, I'm going to go and try and find this treasure. You accidentally found it.
Very much. I was looking for a peace so I could keep doing what I was doing. I wasn't looking for Jesus.
And so what else in this story Jesus told, what else is in there that you really relate to?
And then when this man found this treasure, he covered it back up. And
you did that. You kept it secret.
I did. I kept it secret.
You're sneaky. Luke, is she still sneaky? No? All open, transparent. Wonderful.
I did. I hid it back. I covered it back up. I found Jesus, and it took me a year. Or by the time I knew what I'd found, maybe like 8 months to give myself that, where I couldn't tell anyone. And you know what? God actually told me not to, and He told me not to in His wisdom. And at the time, I didn't understand. I asked God. I said, God, I've found Jesus. Can I stay? Please, I love these people. I love them. I still love them. I wanted to stay. I said, I know I'll be labelled as crazy. I know I talk about the secret place way too much and hearing from God, and everyone thinks that's weird. But I'll give it up. I'll give up being married because I would have been blackmarked. I'll give up that if I can just stay so I can tell my friends about Jesus. But he said no. And when I asked him, he said, no, you cannot have all that I have for you here. You cannot serve me and stay here. It will be robbed from you, he said. And so this man, he's uncovered this treasure in this field, and he knows it's a lot of treasure, and he's so excited. But he covered it back up. And then he went and he sold, or he took everything he had, his possessions. And Lex actually helped me see this, but again, it relates that he didn't go and, I'll just go buy the field, or, I better sell everything I have in exchange for this. Like, he did this in joy. He went and he sold everything. And it says that he sold all that he had and he buys the field. I don't know if he was wealthy. I think a field is worth about 6 months of wages. It takes many, many years, if not a generation or two, to save up for a field. So he's sold a fair bit to buy this field. Everything he had, or he exchanged it or bartered it. The point is not that he bought his salvation. The point is that he turned and he gave up all, and he just wanted this treasure.
And you gave up everything you knew, your existing life, your friendships, family, everything you'd ever known. You're, nearly 21 when you walked out? That's a big chunk of your life. And the word, when it says, and he went and sold everything, that word is quite an amazing word, because it actually means he gave himself, or she, because it's he, she, authority to do that. You gave yourself authority to walk out of there.
That was big.
Yeah.
Giving myself, not me giving myself, God has given this to me, right? But getting to that point where I could enjoy, it was so much joy, but I could walk away from everything I'd ever known. Now, if I was wrong and I had this moment with God, honestly, it felt like I was being asked to jump off a cliff. And I didn't know if I was going to fall and die or be caught. And if I was wrong, I would have to, in shame, take myself back to this place and go through years of disciplining, whatever else comes with that. But I can't remember where I was going with that point. But what did you ask me?
I have no idea. You were just talking and I was listening. And so I think what you were explaining was you gave all this up, and the risk was not, the thought of what could go wrong is not really driving you. The joy of what you saw in this treasure trove, this storehouse. And the storehouse wasn't just what you received that day. This has been unfolding, even in this preparation for today. God's been showing you from this one story all sorts of layers of your own life. Even would you say there's been healing through this
Very healing.
preparation for today?
Very healing. Yeah, I'd never written it all down before, and just, this parable, it's 2 sentences. And I can't just keep uncovering things. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And because he exchanged everything he had and he kept it secret, people who saw what he was doing must have misjudged why he's doing this.
Where I was going. Yeah. Yes. So I kept it secret. God told me to. I did. I sold all. I gave up everything. I gave up my friends, my family, my future. Like, it was all set out for me. My inheritance, essentially, like in a community like that, like, honestly, we talk about inheritance. It's a big thing. It's keep on the way, invest in your children, keep it on. Don't turn your back, or don't, all of that. So I literally walked away from everything. And on that, I put so much effort into leaving Lex that on that next Sunday, I was like, what do I do now? Where is the church? I don't know. Like, what now, God, kind of thing. Like, but I was just so excited. And this man, or this person, when I looked into what it would mean to sell everything you owned, or give up everything you owned for a first century Jewish person, I was shocked. And it basically explained my story. It says that he'd be to give up and sell everything he has in order to buy this field. He'd be severing family ancestral ties to their land and their possessions. He'd be literally severing family lineage. He would lose status or suffer shame, which I did. I suffered a lot of shame from these people for leaving. Stories on that. But he would be risking bankruptcy. And I felt like I was potentially risking bankruptcy in my life. But, however, in joy, he sold it all, and he risked total destitution. But it was worth it. Yeah.
And what we're going to do, we're going to have a part 2 to this, because that was the leaving. How many years ago was that now? Since you left?
To tell you my age.
21 nearly. Was she left?
14.
14 years. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't count, but you're in your 30s. Yep. And so when you arrived here in Bairnsdale, you were still really sensitive to churches, weren't you? Because how long after you actually left and you found Jesus, it was like 6 months, was it, before you actually went to a church?
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 before I went to a church. But 7 years before I could go to a church regularly. Yeah. And
so the first time that Amy and Luke really walked in here, and you floated around different churches looking for a church, we're going to pick this up next week, because there's 2 parables Jesus tells here, and the second one is the pearl of great price. And it's not the same. They're different. And so we're going to pick this up again next week. But just as a little bit of a taste into next week, when you first thought of coming to a church where I am, you didn't like me. You thought I was a whole lot of stuff, and we'll find that out next week. But the thought of coming here with me here, and now we're mates, right? And you're speaking here. I'm telling you, Amy was so terrified at once upon a time to speak to anyone about God in case she did what the cult did and taught people the wrong thing, right? So today has been a big overcoming of many things, a healing, and we're going to pick this up again next week, and we're going to get into the second parable.